Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third World Tsunami Museum Conference. It is a virtual conference because right now, due to our global pandemic, it is very difficult for us to get together in person, but we will do it virtually. But our mission remains absolutely the same. On World Tsunami Awareness Day, what we are aiming to do in the next 90 minutes is to pay homage to the survivors of tsunamis, remember past tsunamis, so that we can use that experience as education for future generations, to look to disaster museums and also survivors' testimonies to help us make sure that we are doing the utmost in terms of risk reduction. You will hear testimonies, you will hear survivor stories, you will hear from the heads of disaster museums. There is so much that we have to do. My name is Femi Oke. It is my honor to be your host today. We start really at a very important point with Patricia from the Dominican Republic and Francisco from Chile to hear their stories of surviving tsunamis. Take a look.
La tierra se abría y las casas se caían una para allá y otra para acá, porque eran tablas de palmas y subieron un murmullo de agua de la tierra, un agua negra, hedionda, cobre, a cosas malas. Cuando yo hago así veo que miro para allá, veo ese mar que se fue de donde él estaba, como a distancia de 3 kilómetros, para allá. Cuando se fue para allá, que venía, subió más alto allá. A coparnos, que si llegaba a donde estaba no quedaba un alma. El único que tiene el poder para todo es Dios. Hizo así, se quedó en su sitio y se desbordó, y se metió para el pueblo, pero muy lento. Pero no bajito, no, ahí le daba el agua a mi papá. Ahí es conmigo montaña a los caballitos. Cuando el agua bajó un poquito, dice mi papá, yo voy para el pueblo. Llegamos al pueblo donde estaba la casa de nosotros. Estaba en ese caño, en ese puente, arrimada a un mango. No esa sola, no, miles de casas. Diciendo casitas que habían por ahí, todas se fueron para el caño. Cuando dice papá, aquí no quedó ni a la cama para que dormimos. Digo yo, pero estamos vivos.
Nunca imaginé que esa noche fue tanto. No, es una mezcla de todo que incluso no lo podéis explicar. Hay un ruido que a mí me llama mucho la atención porque había un tambor golpeando y quedé marcada con ese ruido. Pero el ruido era cada vez más fuerte y como más dije, chucha, esto no es algo normal. Me levanto y piso agua. En eso abro la puerta y el agua es como un monstruo así que entró, estaba tibia, un olor desagradable, y me llega hasta acá, hasta el pecho. Y en eso tomo a mi madre, 71 años, y salgo mirando hacia el mar, y se me suelta. Y me devuelvo, tirándome nuevamente hacia el mar. Se veía oscuro, que se estaba recogiendo todo. Y mi mamá apareció. En eso vamos subiendo y se siente el ruido detrás, cosa que me iba pisando, sí, el agua. Llegamos hasta arriba, hasta la estación de los marinos, y nos encontramos con una reja, o sea, y la euforia mía, así, la adrenalina, y, ¡guau! Y dije, ya, aquí llegamos.
The United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction has a tsunami advocate. Her name is Petra Nemkova. Almost 16 years ago, Petra was on vacation in Thailand. She knew nothing about tsunamis, and she got caught up in the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami. I'm going to let Petra pick up the story from there. We had a little chat earlier. Have a listen.
I was blessed to survive the 2004 Asian tsunami, which was the biggest natural disaster of our lifetime. And I was very lucky to survive with just pelvis broken in 4 places. My partner passed away, and over 230,000 people lost their life that day. Millions were impacted. And it changed lives of millions of people forever. And it's so important to learn from this experience, so the same amount of suffering never happens again.
Petra, you are a World Tsunami Awareness advocate. How have you interpreted that role? What does that mean to you?
As I was blessed and survived the 2004 tsunami, I feel huge responsibility to protect lives from the future threats of tsunamis. And there are still so many people around the world, they don't know how to recognize early warning signs of a tsunami. what to do when tsunamis happen. I was in that position in 2004. I never heard the word tsunami, so I didn't know what to do. And it's so important to learn and act now, because when nature strikes, we have no longer time to prepare, and we cannot protect ourselves and our loved ones. So the time to prepare is now.
Out of your survival, you created an organization, All Hands and Hearts. Can you connect that with your experience and with the memory of your experience? How do those two things go together?
When first responders are leaving, often communities are forgotten. And what I've learned, that this pattern is recurring, and families and communities often wait for years for school to be rebuilt, and not even safe disaster resilient school. So we started with a goal to build one school. And today, with All Hands and Hearts, we have rebuilt 306 schools and 15 countries around the world, and they're disaster resilient schools. We helped to rebuild thousands of homes, helping over 1.2 million people in 20 countries. And it's really amazing that most of this work has been done with volunteers. 61,000 volunteers from 144 countries from around the world. They come in, they give their time, their love, their sweat to strangers for free, just to help. And it makes you believe in humanity, in the kindness of humanity. Every time I go to see our project, it injects the hope back, and the beauty, the most beautiful traits of humankind. And so that was the beginning. The beginning was just one school, and I could never ever imagine that we would be able to help so many people. But it just shows that there are so many incredible people who care about others, and they want to uplift others and better the world.
You can tell why Petra Nenkova is the UNDRR tsunami advocate when she talks about education, when she talks about risk awareness for tsunamis. You see that passion shining from her face. Today is World Tsunami Day, and I want to tell you why we recognize World Tsunami Day on November the 5th, but I'm going to do it via an expert. I want you to meet Ms. Mami Mitsuzori. It is so good to see you. Welcome. You have such a phenomenal title. I am going to ask you to introduce yourself to the world.
Thank you, Femi. My name is Mami Mizutori. I am the UN Secretary General Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction. My role is to advocate, convene member states and stakeholders so that we are better prevented from disaster risks and better prepared. I've been doing this for almost 3 years.
If we look at World Tsunami Awareness Day, it is not that old in terms of how long we have been recognizing something that happens in nature that is so deadly. Can you tell us how it started and when it started?
Oh, that's a very good question, Femi. So what is today about, and why the 5th of November? So December 2015, just 4 years after the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami, Japan and 140 plus countries put forward a joint resolution to the UN General Assembly to make today the World Tsunami Awareness Day. Why? Because there was a strong need to raise awareness of the deadly risk that tsunami poses, and also to improve every one of us, our preparedness and our preventive measures to tsunami and ultimately to all disaster risks. Because tsunami can occur in any coastal area. From 1975, more than 40 deadly tsunamis have attacked us. And why today? We have to go back to 1854, more than 160 years ago. Now, there was a big earthquake in Japan, and after that, a tsunami. And in the western part of Japan, in a village called Hiromura, there was a leader, a local leader who was educated. So when he saw that all of a sudden the tide was lowering and the sea level dropped, he knew it was a tsunami. But the villagers didn't know because they weren't as educated as he was. It was nighttime. And he thought, I have to do something so that they evacuate. So he set fire on his own rice crop, which was in sheaves. Rice was very expensive at that time. But he thought this is the only way to make people run away from the coastline, go up the hills. And they did because they were scared of the fire, not the tsunami. They didn't know. He went up with them and he told them, look, this is what's going to happen. This is called tsunami. We need to go upper. And they all went up and they were saved. This is the origin, I could say, of early warning system in the selfless act of this person who was educated and who set on fire his own asset, saved the people. That happened on the 5th of November in 1854. That's why we are celebrating World Tsunami Awareness Day today.
That is an extraordinary story. Everybody watching right now, Ms. Mitsuzori, is watching and taking part in the World Tsunami Museum Conference. Can you tell us more about the conferences? This is the third one, and what the point of them is.
Indeed, this is the third one. And again, Japan took the initiative to start a series of conferences. The first one in 2017, second in 2018, both in person in Japan. And third, as you told us, Femi, at the outset, because of COVID, we're here virtually, but the importance as high as ever. Now, the initiative was taken by Japan, as I said, and in particular by Mr. Fukuiteru, who is a member of the House of Representatives. I'm delighted he's joining us today. And the main purpose is to create a global network of museums to educate people on tsunami disaster, what happened in their city, in their country when a tsunami or a big disaster struck, and then pass the lessons to future generations so that the next time the next wave comes, the disaster will not kill as many people. The disaster will not affect many people because we are better prepared. And what better way can we do this than to get the network of museums together? Because museums have the role to educate people, to gather knowledge and to pass them to the next generation. So that's what we're doing. And I'm delighted that the 6 museums, disaster museums, who have always come with us in this journey of the conference, is today with us. And we can understand disaster risk better, which is what we need to promote.
Ms. Mitsuzori, we are going to come back to you a little bit later in our program, and I want to talk to you then about education, but that will be in our panel a little bit later. But for now, thank you very much.
Thank you, Femi.
Ms. Mitsuzori is from the UNDRR, but a key partner in our World Tsunami Museum Conference is UNESCO and IOC UNESCO. I want you to hear from the Director General of UNESCO, and that is Ms. Ori Utsule.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here with you today. I would like to thank the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, led by my dear colleague, Mami Mizutori, for organizing this conference, which addresses an essential issue. Tragically, we all know what tsunamis are. We've all seen the devastation and death they leave in their wake, if only because of those that took place in our recent history. Today, 700 million women and men live in at-risk coastal areas. This figure could rise to 1 billion by 2050. In some regions, tsunamis are a permanent threat to entire nations, some of which pay a very heavy price. In 2009, for instance, a tsunami hit Samoa, killing 100 people and causing GDP to shrink by 1/3. Indeed, tsunamis are multidimensional events. They have both direct and and direct victims. They affect supplies of drinking water, for example, in addition to causing long-term economic and ecological damage. For the hundreds of millions of peoples whose lives are at stake, especially those in small island developing states, we have a duty to raise awareness and prevent damage. Reducing these risks is one of the main roles of UNESCO's Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, which was created 60 years ago to further our scientific knowledge of the oceans. The Ocean Literacy Portal, which we have launched in 2018, ensures that this knowledge is shared with the wider public, because understanding oceans is the best way of preserving them in the long term, but also the best way of protecting ourselves. This means taking into account traditional knowledge and techniques, which UNESCO is committed to preserving and transmitting. This heritage often builds on experience developed over many generations. As such, it is a treasure, a precious resource we must capitalize on. For example, by using their knowledge of their environment and its vulnerabilities, some peoples in the Andaman Sea in Southeast Asia were able to escape the tsunamis affecting the region almost unscathed. But I would also like to speak about another subject that is very important to UNESCO, the role of museums. Museums work to transmit knowledge and raise awareness, and UNESCO is proud to support their efforts. Our Jakarta office, for instance, with support from the private sector, contributed to the development of the museography of the Tsunami Museum in Banda Aceh in Indonesia. This museum, along with the 14 others taking part today around the world, helps save lives by preserving the memory of these disasters, by documenting them and by explaining them to the public. The importance of this is clear. Every time we raise someone's awareness of tsunamis, we could be saving a life. Museums play a role in this respect. So too do the testimonies of survivors. By sharing memories and experiences of these disasters, they show how real the risk is. This is why we work to collect and to transmit these testimonies, in particular by including them in educational materials. I would like to thank again the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction in this respect for enabling us to produce a series of 15 videos that ensure these voices are heard. As always, education is the first step towards prevention. Today, we need to continue our efforts to understand, preserve, and live with oceans. These immense bodies of water are so familiar, yet so foreign and sometimes unknown. They're a source of life and a source of constant danger sometimes. The United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, to start in 2021, is an essential event in this respect. We have just presented the decade's implementation plan to the United Nations General Assembly. One of its 7 objectives is a safe ocean, where people are protected from ocean hazards. Today, we are already working towards this goal. I would like to thank Japan for its ongoing support for the decade and World Tsunami Awareness Day. I believe that today's conference shows the momentum gathering pace behind this decade. This is why also I wanted to address you all today. I thank you for your attention.
Director General of UNESCO, Ms. Audrey Uzule. This is the 3rd World Tsunami Museum Conference. You are now all in the conference, delegates. Thank you very much for joining me. One of the main reasons for having this conference is to connect disaster museums around the world. There aren't that many. There are about 12 altogether, just a handful around the world. The latest one was finished last September was when it opened. It's the Third Tsunami Museum. One of the advantages of being a virtual conference is that I can virtually take you on a tour of the latest disaster museum that we have. Let's take that tour right now. Have a look. whole idea of the Tsunami Museum Conference is to create a network of disaster museums around the world for them all to get together, to share their experiences, help each other, work together to help educate the public so we never forget the lessons that we have learned from past disasters. One of the people who is a great proponent of this idea is His Excellency Mr. Teru Fukui, who is a representative member from Japan, and he joins us today on World Tsunami Awareness Day. Mr. Fukui, it is really good to have you here. What would you like to share with us on World Tsunami Awareness Day?
Okay, good evening from the city of Requiem, Takata on the Pacific coast of Northeast Japan. My name is Teru Fukui, as advocate of this conference. First of all, I wish to extend my deepest sympathies to the victims of the earthquake and tsunami that hit Turkey and Greece last Friday. I sincerely hope for the earliest recovery of the afflicted people and the areas affected. You have just watched an introduction video for the Iwate Tsunami Memorial Museum, from where I have the pleasure of speaking to you today. This museum opened in September last year on the site of the huge tsunami that struck Japan in 2011. And I believe it is one of the newest museums of the kind in the world. Next year will mark a decade since the great earthquake of 11 March 2011. It is our responsibility to ensure we never let the memory of this sad event fade, and best gather great lessons we learned for posterity. Behind me, you can see the fire engine firefighter's car that was caught up in the tsunami on the day of the great earthquake. A member of local volunteer fire companies desperately called upon and guided the people to evacuate in the face of the impending tsunami. This fire engine was then washed away the last and later discovered on the hillside. Fortunately, those on board were all unharmed. We now know all the firefighters are the true heroes. Today, I hope to share with you the idea of protecting lives and living in harmony with ocean and earth and with nature, which is the main concept of this museum. In fact, I wrote one picture book, title of which is Oi, Live with the Sea, Live with the Nature. Motif is Oi, Communication. The scene of this picture book is based on the true story of the first high school student summit on World Tsunami Awareness Day, held in Kuroshio Town in 2016. At the end of the summit, students declared that we will love and live with nature. A student from Aceh, Indonesia, who lost all her families at the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami in 2004, was among students who screamed "Oi" at the sea. This picture will be translated into English, of course, Indonesian, of course, and other languages. In 2023, the first overseas high school student summit will be held in Indonesia. I sincerely hope that the grown-up girl from Aceh picks up this book and to read to high school students all over the world, so that this story will be passed on to future generations forever. Yes, today, I hope to share with you the idea of protecting lives and living in harmony with the ocean and earth. In conclusion, I wish to express my sincere hope that our conference will contribute to raising awareness of disaster risk reduction, especially among future generations, and so realizing a world where no one is left behind by disasters or pandemic or any hazard. Yes, we believe we are the living museum. We are the truth for the future. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. From the House of Representatives, Mr. Teru Fukui, who gave an illustrated talk with those pictures. And I know you're going to be looking for that book as soon as we finish our virtual museum conference. One of the things that I told you at the very beginning of our program was that museums are so important when it comes to preserving memories of past disasters and also educating the public. I am going to introduce you to 6 museums, disaster museums from around the world. And so you know where we're going, I want you to take a look at this video. Disaster museums are often built after a tsunami or a disaster has actually happened to preserve the memories, but also to educate future generations. I'm going to introduce you to 6 museums. You may already know maybe 1 or 2 of them already. They may all be new to you. Let's start with Miss Hafnida, and it's really good to have you join us. Welcome, lovely to see you. Miss Hafnida is at the Banda Aceh Tsunami Museum. Tell us more about this museum.
I'm Hafni. I'm the head of Aceh Tsunami Museums. I'm also the curator of the museums. Aceh Tsunami Museums was built after the big earthquake and tsunami in 2004 in Indian Ocean. So, and the building itself built in 2007 and opened for public access in 2011. And the history of the museums, why they want to build, Aceh want to build the museums is because in reconstructions and rehabilitations periods, there are some men very, very worried about what happened in Aceh after tsunami. A lot of volunteers and many institutions come to Aceh to help Aceh back better. So many objects moved, many objects relocated, and some destroyed very fast because they need to clean up the area to build a new facilities for people. So the people, some people from rehabilitation think Aceh need museums, Aceh need a building to preserve an object, how young Aceh generations will learn and know about the devastating of tsunami 2004 if the object lost, the valuable object of tsunami lost, and they create these museums. It's work because today Aceh Tsunami Museums got around 600,000 people each year. They come to the museums to interact with us, to interact with an object, interact with oral history through all program and museum activities. One more thing, the building is not only a museums, but very unique. The designers things very, very brilliant because the building can use for evacuations. I'm not praying and I never want it happens. A tsunami will hit Aceh again, but if the tsunami happens, all the people around museums or close or the people that live close to the coastal can use the museums, especially rooftop, for evacuation. So what I want to say, all of the activities of our museum now only has one purpose, for disasters education. That's it.
Ms. Havnida, it was an education listening to you. I am not letting you go away. I'm going to bring you back and we're going to have a big round table because this is a conference and conferences we have to network. It's a fascinating story and an introduction to your museum. I appreciate you very much. We will see you in a few minutes' time. Thank you so much. I want to take you to the ruins of the Great East Japan earthquake, and we're going to the Sendai Arama Elementary School, and we're going to talk to Mr. Suzuki Kenichi, and he's going to tell us about the school and why the school is a disaster museum as well. It is so nice to see you. Welcome. Please tell us more about the school.
Konnichiwa. I'm Kenichi Suzuki from the city of Sendai. I'd like to introduce the ruins of the Great East Japan earthquake, Sendai Arahama Elementary School. First, I would like to introduce the outline of our facility. Arahama Elementary School is a 4-story building located 700 meters from the ocean. The tsunami that followed the disaster on March 11, 2011, reached up 4.6 meters to the second floor of the building. However, a total of 320 people, including school children and locals, evacuated there and were all rescued. After the earthquake, the school building was closed, but on April 30, 2017, it was opened as the ruins of the disaster. Next, I will explain the purpose of the museum and what contents are on display. We preserved the Arahama Elementary School, a remaining scar from the tsunami, and opened it to public as the ruins of the disaster. Our purpose is to pass on the lessons we learned and also to show the real threat of tsunami to future generations, so that people never again fall victim to tsunami. Since its opening, about 80,000 people per year have visited and perceived the impact of tsunami. The facility also provides them with an opportunity to learn the importance of disaster preparation and contributes towards rising awareness of DRR. In addition, by displaying a model which reproduces the Arahama area before the disaster, they can pass on the history and memories of the Arahama area that were lost to the tsunami. As for our contribution to education, there are a large number of people from various organizations from both Japan and overseas who, regardless of age or gender, have visited this facility. As a part of education for DRR, some visitors were not even born at the time of the disaster. We staff members put forward our best possible efforts towards the facility tour and watch adults as well as many students to understand the threat of tsunami. Due to the fact that this facility was originally an elementary school, specifically, I try to convey the fact that the tsunami instantly took away the pre-disaster regular life of people living in the Arahama area, so that visitors too can imagine themselves in the same situation. That concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenichi. We will come back to you for our group discussion with the other heads of disaster museums around the world. But thank you for now. This is the World Tsunami Museum Conference. Of course, we have to bring you the heads of disaster museums around the world. They are virtually getting together. We go now or talk now about the Pacific Tsunami Museum. Ms. Marlene Murray is going to tell us more about that. Welcome, good to see you. I am going to give the floor over to you. Thank you.
Hello. The Pacific Tsunami Museum is located in Hilo, Hawaii, and we've been around for over 26 years now. And Hawaii, and in particular, the town of Hilo, has been significantly impacted by two major tsunamis. And there was the 1946 tsunami that was generated from an earthquake in the Aleutian Islands. And then there was a 1960 tsunami that was generated from Chile. And the idea of a tsunami museum in Hilo really came about from a conversation between the two co-founders who felt that we really needed to preserve the memories of the tsunamis. That the community needed to remember what happened, to learn from what happened, and not make the same mistakes, and to use that information to better prepare for future tsunamis. So they started out by just talking to people, interviewing tsunami survivors, collecting photos, and piecing together the stories, and then creating the exhibits. And we've been in the building pictured behind me since 1997. So our mission statement is that through tsunami education and awareness, no one should die due to a tsunami. And our goals are to promote tsunami education, to preserve history, and also serve as a living memorial to those who lost their lives in past tsunamis. We not only feature tsunamis that have impacted Hawaii, we also have exhibits on Alaska, the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, the 2011 tsunami in Japan, and we also have a video that we show throughout the day, which covers everything from the history of tsunamis in Hawaii, some very powerful tsunami stories, the science of tsunamis, as well as important safety information. We have a collection of over 5,000 tsunami photos, over 500 tsunami interviews from all over the world. On average, we have about 20,000 visitors a year. 10%, or sorry, 90% are non-residents. Most are from the United States, but we also have many international visitors. We host school groups from all ages, from elementary school up to the university level. And we are the only tsunami museum in Hawaii. We believe we're the only tsunami museum in the United States. And at one time, we were the only tsunami museum in the world.
Thank you very much. That's said with so much pride, Marlene Murray. You can see behind Marlene, there is the Pacific Tsunami Museum. You see the entryway there. Virtually, I'm going to be able to take you on a tour. Let's take a look inside.
Aloha, and welcome to the Pacific Tsunami Museum, located in downtown Hilo on the island of Hawaii. Your tour begins with a model of Hilo, which depicts how the town used to look prior to the 1946 tsunami, which devastated the island and shaped its future development. The Story of Hilo exhibit provides many interesting facts about the history of the island and takes you from the 1700s up to the 1946 tsunami. There are stories of devastation, tragedy, courageous rescues, and recovery. The last devastating tsunami to strike Hawaii was the 1960 tsunami generated by a 9.5 magnitude earthquake in Chile. This exhibit features many survivor stories and demonstrates the resiliency of the community as they worked hard to rebuild using the lessons they learned from the tragedy. The local tsunamis exhibit is currently being renovated. Here's a sneak peek of the new exhibit, which emphasizes knowing the warning signs of tsunamis and knowing what to do, since unlike distant tsunamis, there may only be a few minutes to take action and get to safety. The Amazing Rescues exhibit features 3 incredible rescue stories which occurred at Lapahoehoe Point, where 24 students and teachers lost their lives in the 1946 tsunami. The Science Room teaches visitors about what generates tsunamis, the warning signs, the warning system, and research. It even features an earthquake simulation where the user decides whether to issue a tsunami warning. The interactive wave tank is one of our most popular exhibits. The Indian Ocean Tsunami of 2004 exhibit features many heartbreaking stories where visitors are often seen weeping as they watch the powerful videos. The Great Eastern Japan Earthquake and Tsunami of 2011 exhibit is currently under renovation and is scheduled to be completed by early 2021. The new exhibit will include other tsunamis that occurred in Japan throughout modern history. A 25-minute video is shown throughout the day to further enhance the visitor experience and to reinforce the important information we hope they will have learned from their visit to the museum. The goals of the Pacific Tsunami Museum are to prevent loss of life from tsunami events by promoting tsunami education and awareness, as well as to preserve the social and cultural history of Hawaii. The museum also serves as a living memorial to those who lost their lives in past tsunami events. The museum opened its doors at its current location in 1998 and continually works to update and improve its exhibits and strives to provide the human stories combined with the scientific explanation. Mahalo for visiting the Pacific Tsunami Museum.
Thank you for being with us. You are watching the World Tsunami Museum Conference, the third of its kind, and it is virtual. So really appreciate you joining from all over the world. At the moment, we are talking to 6 heads or representatives of disaster museums from around the world. They're all very different, and the reasons for them being established is very different as well. I want to take you to Thailand. I'm going to say hello to Ms. Ratchanikon Tongtip. It's so good to see you. Tell us about, welcome, the International Tsunami Museum in Thailand.
Sawadee. My name is Ratchanikon Tongtip. I'm from International Tsunami Museum from Thailand. On 26 December 2004, Thailand was hit by the tsunami, the greatest natural disaster in our country. The International Tsunami Museum and Tsunami Memorial Museum were formed by ex-student leaders who were strongly committed to social work supporting tsunami-related events. We operating in 2 sites in Phang Nga province, the most affected area in Thailand. We opened in 2006. The museum purpose is to increase knowledge and awareness about the tsunami and the other natural hazards. We open daily from 9 to 9 all year round. And both museums receive no direct funding money from other organizations. The museum management is administered by a committee comprised of a number of academic lecturers and local people. Small personal contributions allow the hiring of an officer to take care of the museum, and donations are used for supporting the local children program. The entrance to the museum is free for the local residents, children, school, university, public organizations, and government organizations. The museum showed the exhibit, which include animations and video of the cause of tsunami, tsunami warning sign, the impact of tsunami on the environment, Tsunami survivor story early warning system sent it from Prathong Island, providing tangible evidence that the 2004 tsunami was not the first of type, and mechanism of tsunami warning are displayed. The visitor of the museum include ambassador, international university study tour, and notable celebrity by an introduction of Japan Embassy in Thailand, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, UNISDR office in Japan, and JICA invited the museum director to attend the first World Tsunami Museum Conference in 2017. With the museum director got chance to meet Associate Professor Anawat Sapasi from International Research Institute of Disaster Science at Tohoku University. He keeps supporting the technical support, and now he is the one of the museum advisor. In 2019, the museum started the Tsunami Memorial Tour to show the knowledge and information about the tsunami, travel to the tsunami affected area, storytelling, and life lesson. From 2006 until now, the museum placed particular emphasis on initiative for children and support for the tourists and local people for disaster preparedness. And now we are the popular tourist attraction in this area. The museum takes a role to knowledge in knowledge hub as the center for knowledge transmission, passing on the memory to the future generation and disaster preparedness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tongtip. We will bring you back for our networking session with the other representatives from disaster museums, but thank you very much for now. Paulo, Almeida, Fernandez is going to be with us next from the Museum of Lisbon. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that museum and how it connects to disaster awareness. Paulo, welcome.
Hi there. I want to thank you so much for having invited the Museum of Lisbon to be part of this so important conference. I attended the first one back in 2017 in the great island of Ishigaki, and it's an honor to be part of this growing and global network. The Museum of Lisbon started in 1909 as a city's museum with a mission to tell the specific history of our great, beautiful capital of Portugal. We run 5 different sites in downtown Lisbon, and we are working on another 2. So we are a multi-branch museum that is responsible for some of the most iconic buildings in the city. Before the COVID pandemic, we were close to 200,000 visitors, which is a quite interesting figure for Portuguese reality. And the considerable part of these visitors are children in school and learning service programs. Our connection to the disaster museums is related with the major earthquake of 1755. It was 265 years ago, but the earthquake is still very visible in the urban landscape of Lisbon. The earthquake was so devastating that 2/3 of the buildings were destroyed. Downtown Lisbon was in ruins, and we estimate that around 40,000 people died. There was also a tsunami with at least 3 major waves that reached, well, we estimate from 6 to 10 meters, and the tsunami destroyed the harbor, a few churches, and killed the ones who thought the beach was a safe place. And furthermore, the city also burned for 4 days. So to preserve the memory of this massive disaster, although it was in the 18th century, but to preserve its memory, it's our contribution to awake consciousness and resilience for earthquakes and tsunamis nowadays. Thank you.
Paulo, thank you so much. You'll be coming back in our conversation in just a little bit. See you soon. I want to take you to Turkey next and introduce you to Mr. Osman Bali. I know we have viewers who are watching in Turkey right now, so I know you're going to be fascinated by Mr. Osman Bali. He is from the Bursa Disaster Training Center. Welcome, Mr. Bali. Tell us about the training center.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your inviting. I want to introduce Disaster Education Training Center in Bursa. This center has been founded to give applied training and raise the awareness of the participants by using simulation technologies, especially for students and also staff from both public and private sectors and the volunteers as well. Our center, training center, has entered service in August 17 in 2013. And the total usable area is 6,200 square meters. And center giving service from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., except official holidays and weekends. In the training center, there is 12 different training sections. I want to mention about them shortly. First of all, we have tsunami information area to give an training to strengthen tsunami awareness and the preparedness, and earthquake shaking table and simulation system. And there is a fire extinguishing simulation system, smoke simulation system, 5D cinema for the children especially. It's really raising their awareness for disasters. And we have storm simulation room, emergency call simulation, first aid training room. There's a wreckage corridor, and there is a carbon monoxide poisoning simulation, hotel fire escape hologram, and flash flood simulation room we have. In Bursa, in the training center, we have cooperation between National Education, Director of National Education. I mean, this is for the students visit the disaster training center with a program. With this protocol, the visit all of the school in Bursa to our center has been planned, and we are implementing now. Actually, majority of our visitors from students. 70% of the visitors are from primary school and 10% from secondary school. And every year we are hosting 40,000 visitors. And from 2013 up to now, the total amount of the visitors is 190,000 people. The number of the visitors to education centers is increasing every year. But this is during this pandemic period, the training activities were suspended, unfortunately. Now we are not giving service. That's all from my side. Thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osman Bali. All from your side for now, but I will bring you back in just a moment. Did you notice on World Tsunami Awareness Day that our representatives from our disaster museums around the world, they all mentioned how many visitors they had. And there were thousands of visitors all going to all of these different facilities around the globe. What we wanted to do was just spend a few minutes with some youngsters and also some educators talking about what they got from visits to disaster museums. Let's have a look.
What did you learn from visiting the museum?
I learned to go to high ground when there's a tsunami nearby.
Why do you think it's important to learn about tsunamis?
Because it can save your life.
Zoe, have you ever been to the Pacific Tsunami Museum?
Yes, I have.
What did you learn there?
I learned about how tsunamis are formed, and I learned about the first tsunami that hit Hilo.
Why do you think it's important to learn about tsunamis?
I think it's important to learn about tsunamis because if you don't know what they are or what they do, then you could be seriously injured if one ever hit.
I learned from visiting the Pacific Tsunami Museum is that sometimes large earthquakes can trigger a tsunami.
Why do you think it's important to learn about tsunamis?
Because I know a few people that they say they know a lot about tsunamis and other stuff. But once they go to the museum, they learn more than they thought.
Very good. Thank you, Manuel.
You're welcome.
で実際にこういうところに来て見てみて、自分が体験したものとはまた違う様子を学んで、やっぱり津波の恐ろしさを肌で感じることができて、すごく勉強になりました。本当に周りが何もない状況にすごい驚いています。津波が起きた時にどういう対応を取るかっていうこととかを迅速に決めなきゃいけないですけど、その判断で自分の命が助かったり、逆に命を落としてしまったりとか、命の選択が迫られるので、日頃からどういうふうに避難するかとかっていうのを考えていくことがすごい大切なのだなっていうことを改めて感じました。
今私養護教諭の勉強をしてるんですけど、ここは避難の場所が学校だったということで、教師の役割っていうのもすごく見えてくるなと思っていて、ここは校長先生がその体育館じゃなくてこっちの校舎の方に、屋上の方に避難するっていう選択をされたってことだったんですけど、本当にそれが大勢の命を救うその大事な選択だったんだなっていうふうに思って、そういった責任の重さっていうのも教師を勉強している身としては感じることができました。
It is World Tsunami Awareness Day. I have back here an amazing array of heads or representatives of disaster museums from around the world, and also the UNDRR as well, Mami Mitsuri, who is in the mix as well, because our mission is education and awareness today. And I'm not letting anyone go home or leave our virtual session without having that awareness and that happening. Let me just tell you, we have reps. Elif Ertas, who is watching in Turkey right now. He's a teacher in Turkey. He says, I believe museums are one of the best learning environments, so thank you for this opportunity. Marlene, you said when you were talking about your museum that sometimes people leave in tears. What is it that moves them to tears? Can you tell us?
There's just so much sadness when a survivor tells this story. It's because they're often talking about a family member or someone that they loved, and our interviews really capture that, and it's the nature of tsunamis and the death, the devastation that these people witness. And we had very good people who interviewed the survivors, and so that emotion comes out, and you really can't help but be moved by the stories that you hear.
Osman, what you do at the Bursa Training Center is remarkable because you are getting people ready. They are preparing. Tell us one thing for our international audience watching that will help them be ready for a tsunami. One thing, what would you teach them?
We are teaching how they react before to tsunami or before earthquake, and during, especially for during earthquake and after tsunami and earthquake.
Thank you so much. Paulo, what struck me was that you were memorializing an earthquake that happened in the 18th century. That's so long ago. How do you do that effectively, and so that people just don't think that was a long time ago? We're not going to have this issue in Lisbon ever again. It's not going to be a problem for Portugal. How do you keep it fresh and relevant and keep educating the public?
Well, that's a challenge indeed. Well, the museum has an historical approach because we have mainly images from the earthquake, because there were lots of engravers from Western Europe who wanted to depict a city in ruins. So we have all of those memories back from the 18th century, but we have also some archaeological artifacts that were found in, in archaeological digs, and mainly pottery, burned pottery or something, something that deals with the day-to-day life. People were standing there, they had that pottery, and from all of a sudden, their houses went down and the pottery was left there. So it's a memory from those day-to-day living. And we are strongly connected to research universities and research units, and so we are always studying this phenomena, and through digital contents we are managing to do something special about something that was indeed so long ago.
I want to bring in Mami Mitsutori here, because I know that for you it's education, education, education. How do we get the public ready, preparing for something that they may not know? To be honest, we don't know. We don't know when a tsunami is going to happen. We have an inkling if we're by water and there's some seismic activity, but we don't know for sure. Mami Mitsutori, I'm going to bring her up on the Zoom screen because I know she's with us. Education is so key. And the whole idea of our virtual museum conference right now is about education. Tell us more about that. Why is that such a big, big, big issue? Because we could be lulled into a sense of security of it won't happen to us. In fact, the tsunami advocate that you have, Petra Nemkova, she said, I'm from Czechoslovakia. I would never expect to experience a tsunami. And there she was on vacation in Thailand. And she survived one of the worst tsunamis that in our living memory. So that education, that preparedness. Speak to us about that.
Femi, so I'd like to share a story with you, a true story. This is what happened in a city called Kamaishi in 2011 when the tsunami hit the city. It's called the story is called the Miracle of Kamaishi. It was the secondary school which introduced in their modules about disaster and tsunami preparedness. So the students learned from a university professor about tsunamis, what they had to do, and the big tsunami came. So on that day, they knew what they had to do. They knew that they had to evacuate. They saw from what they saw that this was going to be a really big one. So they took the elementary school students, the younger ones, with them. And on the journey, they also got the senior citizens, and they evacuated to a hill. But then they saw that the tsunami was much stronger than they thought. They kept on moving forward, and they evacuated. And the story is called The Miracle of Kamaishi. But when I met the mayor of Kamaishi City a few years ago, he told me, this shouldn't be a miracle. He said, each and every child, student in a disaster-prone area has to be educated so that they know what are the risks that surround them, and they know what they have to do when the disaster strikes. Now, I'm sad to say, but now disaster prone, we're talking about every child and every person because of climate change, because of COVID-19 right now. So that is the power of education. And I'm glad to hear, I'm delighted to hear that all these 6 museums are doing great, but let's embed disaster into the curricula so that as part of the curricula, the teachers will take them to the museums. One step further. Back to you, Femi.
Mr. Suzuki, I have to talk to you about children because the Sendai Arama Elementary School, it's a school. When children come to that disaster museum, what is their reaction? What are they learning?
Okay. このアラハマ地区には歴史的に繰り返し津波が来ていたことは明らかなんですが、実際にその被害の跡を見ていただくことで大きなインパクトを受けているというふうに思います。それが自分の命を守ることにつながる大きな教育の場として役割を果たしているのかなというふうに思っております。
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have a very large number of tsunamis which have been repeated in the Arahama area, which surrounds the Ara Elementary School. And when I see these children come here and they see the destruction which has been caused in the state of the school, I can see that it has a very large impact upon them, and they seem to really understand the problems. They really feel that seeing that, they know that they should be make more efforts in order to protect their life and learn properly how to save themselves and people around them.
Thank you so much. Ms. Hafnida, the Bande Aceh Tsunami Museum, so many people come to visit it, or before COVID would come to visit it. How do you still continue to educate people even now that we're in a global pandemic?
We not stop because disaster education is, we cannot, the people only get one visit or only for temporary education. So pandemic, of course, we close the museum, but we not stop to making a lot of activity with people. The museum come to the people. The museum come to the house of the victims, and we still arrange technical guidance on COVID-19. We collect a lot oral history, and we recruit some volunteers. Of course, again, with technical guidance. So we never stop to educate people, even in pandemic.
Everybody is nodding there. Ms. Tongtit, one last thing. If you were going to teach the world one thing about tsunami awareness, what would you teach them? And Ms. Tongtip, I would suggest that you unmute yourself and then we can see you and then we can hear you as well. All right, fantastic. Go ahead.
If I have only one thing that I can teach to the people or the children is ready. If you have ready for everything that will come to your life as a disaster, you will survive.
Thank you so much. Look at this Zoom room full of amazing speakers. Thank you very much for your work. We really appreciate you on World Tsunami Awareness Day. One of the important parts of all of these facilities, all of these disaster museums, is the testimony of survivors. I'm going to take a pause here so you can listen to two survivors who made it out of tsunamis and have some experience to share with you. Have a look.
The ground is shaking and the house is everything, making a lot of different noises. Very frightening. By the time people run, look for their own life. We thought it's something at the end of the world. We say, oh, that's the end of the world. And we cried and we prayed. Nobody can help us. We shout for help, nobody. It struck us very strong. Then I left my grandson, came out from my hand. Then there we separated. Then I don't know. I just like after another day, I hear that somebody found my grandson. So his body is no good. So they just buried at my place there.
I was by the pool. This was probably about 8 in the morning, and we were playing by the pool. And all of a sudden, the world starts to shake, and you don't really understand what's happening. And then you start to hear screams. Then you all of a sudden see a black wall. And many times when we think of a tsunami, we imagine a big wave that you can recognize. It's really a massive wall that approaches so fast. And before you even understand what happens, you're being drowned, you're being pulled underwater, and it's, you lose consciousness. And then when you can finally come up and get breath, you don't see the world. You see people floating, people screaming, you see torn buildings, and it's hard to recognize reality in that moment. But it's not a bad dream. It's something that can happen to anyone at any moment. And I think that's why it's so important that we do something about it. We know that these things happen. We know that we can't know exactly when, but that they will happen. And that if they do and we haven't prepared, many, many people will die. Again, and it elicits that responsibility that we have to improve the current circumstances around the world. It needs to be a movement that is born here in the UN and then spreads to different governments, and then from the governments to the people around the world.
Eljin Nomura is a world-class violinist. He is Japanese and he is joining us today. And you may well be thinking, why? Eljin, it's so lovely to meet you. It's lovely to see you. It's lovely to be in the same virtual space as you. You have an amazing title. It is UNESCO First Artist for Peace. Can you connect your music to disaster preparedness? Make that link for our audience.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eljin Nomura, violinist and a UNESCO Artist for Peace. It is so pleased to be together in this event. Well, music has the power to bring many effects to the humankind. And I hope the music could help raise awareness about tsunamis.
You have taught youngsters who've been in a disaster. You spent time teaching them music, giving them a masterclass after an earthquake in Japan. Can you tell us more about that and how they reacted? How did music help them?
I think it is impossible for anyone other than the person to fully understand the sorrow and the pain of, for example, of losing loved ones or suffer struggle things. However, even though with solidarity as my spirit, I have visited the stricken area many times every year to make consolation and performances for the victims. Because those were the biggest things we as performers could do to help. And the things, what I can do for someone else is to play music. And I realized that it is my mission through my whole life to continue exploring what music can do as a UNESCO Artist for Peace.
You also have a personal connection to disaster, to earthquakes. Would you share that with us? Because it's not just about philanthropy and how you know that music can be so healing. You've experienced this as well.
Oh, well, I have always put my prayers to the music when I perform. And in this time, I have played 2 pieces of music by Johann Sebastian Bach at the place where the survivors of orphanato in Japan were evacuated for months just after the earthquake and the tsunami in 2011. The images of sea is a beach where a huge tsunami of 40 meters high hit at the time. I put my prayers into these 2 pieces of Bach's music. The first one is Requiem for the victims of tsunami. And the other one is hope that a more resilient world will be absolutely built.
Aiji Nomura, we are going to hear 2 beautiful pieces of music from you. And we really thank you for being part of the World Museum Tsunami Conference. It's a virtual conference. We are going to hear the music virtually, but it's been such a great pleasure to talk to you personally. Aiji Nomura, stand by. You're going to play us out. Thank you so much. So we are coming towards the end of the 3rd World Museum Tsunami Conference. I have to thank so many people, the museum heads, who talked to you about their various museums. We had virtual guided tours through the museums, which was wonderful. We had heads of UNESCO and the UNDRR as well, talking about their work, why they're so passionate about education. I want to thank the government of Japan, also UNDRR and UNESCO, key partners in this virtual event, and you for being here with us. My name is Femi Oke. I can think of no better way to end our event than with Mr. Aiji Nomura to play us out. Thank you.
It's my hope Bach's music, such as a symbol of prayer, can serve as a catalyst to raise the awareness of tsunami and lead people towards prayers, hoping of building a more resilient world.
Thank you.